Hello and welcome to Planet Outlook. After a spell of clear blue skies, the haze is back in Delhi. Air pollution is back in the headlines. My guest today is Anumita Roy Choudhury, Executive Director, Center for Science and Environment. Anumita has been working on air pollution for over the last 2 decades. And anybody working on air pollution, some of us think that the air pollution is a kind of a recent phenomenon, but she has been fighting a battle for over 20 years. Thank you, Anumita Roy Choudhury, for joining us.
Thank you.
Tell us about this long journey of 20 years that you have been campaigning for clean air.
Ananda, you're really taking me down the memory lane, and it's an amazing memory and a journey. You know, when I look back 20 years ago in CSE, and that was a time, and I'm talking about 1995, 96, and air pollution was not on anyone's table. No one was discussing. It was nobody's agenda. And to a great extent, even for us, working on air pollution was quite accidental. You know, it didn't really happen as a design. And I still remember Anil Agarwal, who was the founder director of Center for Science and Environment. Just one afternoon, he just called me and my another colleague and said that what is it happening in the city? This government is talking about a PUC drive, that we all have to take our cars to get the backside of the car checked. Okay, what is this supposed to do? Just go and find out and do a story on it, right? And went out to look and understand, and we realized, well, it's supposed to be a strategy to control air pollution. But then the question we asked, that if air pollution is a problem, and about which we knew very little at that point of time, very little data, but is that all you do just to check the tailpipe of our car to solve the issue? Now that really took us on a journey. And we then trooped out, we did a deep dive investigation, talked to everyone, and then understood. We met the automobile industry, refineries, and everyone. And then the whole thing came out that this whole pollution problem, that how deep the problem is. And that the automobile industry has not improved the technology since that old carburetor technology that had come with Fiat and Ambassador. And then the fuel quality was still so dirty. Pollution was such a big problem. So we put it all together in a book and very provocatively called it Slow Murder, the deadly story of vehicular pollution in India. And we particularly look into the vehicular pollution because at that point of time, the action was being taken to shift polluting industries out of Delhi and so forth. Now, that's when, but just understand that building a public conversation on air pollution at that point of time, when you did not have social media, you did not have your mobile phone, we couldn't even do research just by Googling, right? I mean, it was a completely new generation of that we're talking about. And yet we had to excite public imagination. And yet we had to fire up public opinion. And that's where we had to get a lot more inventive. But when I compare that period with the way we do it now, I feel that there is so much difference between the way we are engaging, the way we are communicating, the platforms that are available to us today, and how deeply that is different from what there was, and the basic understanding of air pollution. And at that point of time, air pollution was a visible pollution. You could see black smoke, and which you don't see black smoke coming out right now from the vehicles. And it was so easy for everyone and for the politicians and the government to be so dismissive and just treat it as dust. Okay? So the whole air pollution was dismissed as dust. And that's where we feel that we have come a long way, and the whole challenge that we had to face at that point of time, that how do you demystify this whole idea when no one is even asking for that information? How do you still get people to listen, to respond? How do you invent your communication strategy? And that's what reminds me that that was the first time in 1998 when, as you may know, Dr. Naresh Trehan, quite a noted cardiologist, when he told us that when I do open heart surgery, just by looking at the color of the lung, I can say whether the patient is from outside or Delhi. And that's when he shared the lung pictures. And, so way back. Now, those were our communication tool then. When you had no data, you showed the black lung of Delhi to people to make them understand. So that's the way we had to start. And the whole campaign that had to be built then. And it was so combative then. There was so much resistance, even now there is. But then the resistance and inertia was both very high and strong. And if I can continue, then I'll just tell you that when we first put out Slow Murder and we organized public meeting, imagine at that point of time, we called our public meeting public trial, and to have 500 people in the room. But then what is interesting is we realized that if you put out good information, good science, that itself becomes your warheads. And that is good enough to energize the change outside. And therefore we saw the dramatic response from the Supreme Court, which was at that point of time hearing the air pollution case for almost a decade, right, with very little result on ground. But then how well court responded, and then they asked the Ministry of Environment and Forest to come up with a white paper on pollution and then set up an authority to deal with this problem. And that happened within a year of our work being put out. So that also gave us a kind of a policy, a kind of a platform where we could leverage our own research, our own understanding, policy action to take forward the agenda. And that's how the whole first generation action on that's the CNG period, as you may recall, right? And what a fight, what a battle it was, I mean, I look at the resistance today, but that was a street fight, and I still remember, imagine today, I mean, just a month ago, Delhi government announced its policy of 25% electrification by 2024 of vehicles. Imagine 20 years ago, when in 1998 you get a court order that your entire public transport has to run on natural gas. Imagine in that kind of, when everything else was suffering from a severe technology lag. We were not even at Euro 0 level for vehicles. And our fuels were the dirtiest fuel possible. I mean, just imagine the diesel and the petrol you buy in Delhi today has sulfur level of 10 ppm. And when we started our campaign 20 years ago, the sulfur content was 5,000 ppm, right? Can you therefore just see, I mean, what it was all about?
In terms of public transport, we have made great strides with the metro. This year, even with the private vehicles, the BS6 standards come in. But somewhere we have lagged for the electric vehicles or electric mobility, whatever you call it. So I understand there is a huge lobby, which you have also mentioned in your speeches last month and all, which is kind of holding it back. So how soon or kind of can we move towards electric mobility, or it will take another decade? What's your how you see the future with electric mobility?
India has, and that is a big win, the only country in the world to have leapfrogged directly from BS4 to BS6. And this happened in April this year, okay? And we are very happy that despite the pandemic, despite the economic slowdown, government did stay on track. And BS6 has come into play. Now, a lot of discussion have started on electric mobility. And we know that the next change, the next step has to be electric mobility. Because IC engine, the internal combustion engine, wherever we have brought it today, while it has improved technologically a lot, but it has also become technically a very complex technology to maintain, to operate, and more expensive. And that's the reason why we may have got BS6, but many people don't understand that we are still campaigning for the best regulations of BS6 with a lot of details in it, which will have to ensure that the real world emissions from vehicles when they're flying on the road are not high, like the Dieselgate problem that Europe faced, like the Volkswagen scandal that the world faced, right? So we are still struggling with that. So which means if IC engine is becoming a challenge already, even after the cleanup, the next big jump has to be zero emission. And now here, India has been talking about electric mobility since 2013, when it set some target of 6 to 7 million electric vehicles in this country by 2020. We are in 2020, but I think we only have less than 1 lakh vehicle in the country. But then we have come up with the incentive program. The FAME incentive program is there. Question is that will this become a reality and a scalable reality? The problem is with the design of our policy right now. And we have to understand where the gaps are. The big gaps are that we still do not have any regulatory target and a mandate. So nowhere we have put it on, written on stone somewhere, saying that by 2030, 30 to 40% of the fleet should be electrified. We have not done that yet. And as a result of that, and currently whatever incentive schemes that we have, these are very short term. So FAME 1 for 2 years, FAME 3 for 3 years, this does not bring certainty in the market. Industry requires a committed timeline. Industry requires a long-term roadmap so that it will help them to commit investments and really change their technology mix. And other levers that can push electrification, and which Europe is doing, and we should look at into this, it has been found that if you also have much tighter fuel efficiency standards, then that will certainly help to accelerate. But our fuel efficiency standards are very weak. So what we will say today is that very quickly, government needs to set the target, adopt zero emission mandate for the automobile industry so that they have a clear mandate that annually a certain percentage of their new production should move to electric, and that should be notified. And as a supportive, we need a very clear roadmap and a timeline for the larger ecosystem planning, which is the charging infrastructure, because otherwise people are not going to buy. There's going to be range anxiety, and all the incentive programs and state government policy. So today, when Delhi government has given this policy, and it's quite a detailed policy, and all the enabling measures in that what kind of incentive, how are they going to generate fund, how are they going to charging infrastructure, these things become very critical. And this will have to be done nationwide. So I just hope, because that's the next big fight that we have to take on now.
Talking about policy and the roadmap, so the country has this now, the National Clean Air, which came last year. And this year, the Prime Minister in his Independence Day speech also mentioned the National Clean Air Plan, and he wants to clean up 100 cities by 2024. Is that possible in just 4 years? Can you do that?
So let's understand this a bit. One, it's good that for the first time now we do have a framework for National Air Quality Program, which is a good thing to do. And this has certainly helped about 122 cities that they have identified as polluted and non-attainment. So they have developed their plan and they are implementing. Question here is that what kind of compliance and deterrence framework you have in place to ensure that the plans get implemented the way they need to get implemented. But there is another big lesson here. And this lesson has also come so sharply from our lockdown phase. You know, during lockdown, when all of us kind of celebrated the blue sky, right? The nature healing itself, right? The big lesson there is that kind of cleanup was possible not with just one local action. The entire region cleaned up. And that's what we're saying, that now National NCAP program should adopt an airshed and a regional approach. So while you need to intensify action at the city level, where a lot of local pollution happening, and you need to really kind of down there, but it has to get implemented across Indo-Gangetic plain. And that's so Delhi cannot stay clean if the rest of the Indo-Gangetic plain is not clean or NCR is not clean. And the other big lesson is, and as you said, that can we do this? It is possible only if we are able to push for sectoral deep dive reform, because cleaner action plans are multi-sector plan. You have plan for vehicles and transport, for industry, power plant, waste burning, construction, solid fuel for cooking. Now, in each sector, we are facing very strong problems. For instance, power plant standards, we are not being able to meet them. But now we are only talking about delaying the standards. But instead of that, if we had focused on what kind of systemic reforms are needed in the power plant sector, the DISCOM reforms, the bankable projects in power plant, that, there's a whole lot of issues there. So similarly, industry requires clean fuel, for instance. But how can you promote clean fuel in industry if clean fuel is more expensive than your dirty fuel? So today, we have got such perverse policy that natural gas, which can be used in industry, that is outside GST and has very high taxation on it. But coal is in GST and has low tax. So coal is much cheaper than natural gas. So how can you therefore promote clean fuel in industry? So if we cannot simultaneously address these systemic issues, similarly, waste burning is a big problem today, right?
I just wanted to stop you there and come back to the coal issue.
Yeah.
Because it seems very contradictory. One, we have introduced this National Clean Air Plan. And during the lockdown, as you mentioned, we've seen blue sky, we've seen a much cleaner air. Yeah. But that is the time when the government went full throttle on coal and opened up all these coal blocks kind of thing.
Yeah.
So there are these contradictory things happening all the time. And as I understand, some of you as experts have said that you can't look at the city level kind of thing. You have to look at the regional level. And coal takes the lion's share of pollution more than the vehicular emissions.
Absolutely. So that is certainly a big worry. So therefore understand that this kind of decisions were taken because of the economic disruption. This was part of the economic recovery package, right? So the whole commercialization of coal was put on the table as part of economic recovery. And we are worried because this coal, and a lot of this coal in India is also low quality coal. And this will not be used by the key coal users like the steel industry, because they will still be importing coal because they need better quality coal. Therefore, this means that if so much of commercial coal is available and low quality, these are all going to come into your small and medium scale units who do not have the ability to install pollution control equipment.
Thank you.
Imagine the disaster in the making, therefore. So that's the reason why we raise this whole issue, that make dirty fuel more expensive than the clean fuel. But this also tells us that at this moment, when government is talking about economic recovery, this has to be green recovery. It should not be an unconditional recovery. And that's because post-pandemic agenda, what we are calling the new normal, here, any investment and the new resource infusion that is going to happen in any sector, it has to be linked with performance, and environmental performance will have to be an important criteria. Otherwise, we will not be able to address this issue. And in this, I'll just give you another example. Take public transport. So we all know, and today if you look at the Clean Air Action Plan of all the 122 cities under NCAP, they've all listed public transport as a strategy to reduce pollution from vehicles, right? But how will that happen? During pandemic, because of social distancing, stigma, fear of infection, public transport ridership has just collapsed. And the data is showing there has been a massive slide, not only in ridership, but their earnings. Even 70% jump in the government spending on the viability gap to do for the public transport. The entire operations have become absolutely unviable. Today, private bus operators are even surrendering their buses. Now, in that kind of a scenario, how do you even expect that in the post-COVID times, we will be able to reduce our dependence on personal vehicles, that we will be able to scale up public transport? Now, this requires a very quick intervention from the government. They have to come up with a fiscal stimulus package for the public transport, revive it, first to reach the pre-COVID level, and then to modernize and scale up so that we can really see the big shift from personal vehicles to public transport. That's where the entire thought has to go today. Because during pandemic, while we have got blue sky, but the systems needed for blue sky have collapsed. So if you do not have a green recovery, we are in big trouble.
Also, during the lockdown, you noticed the levels of ozone were quite high, which you are very worried about. So tell us a little of the ozone, the ground level ozone pollution that you notice here.
So that is what we call the new rogue in town. All our action plans today are driven by the particulate pollution, but which is fine because particulates are the big and the dominant. And we also believe that if the action for particulates can be strengthened, it is also going to reduce other gases as well. But atmospheric chemistry is a lot more complex. So imagine during lockdown when nothing is working, nothing is there, your normal pollution is down, but still ozone was raising its ugly head. And that's all because whatever gases that were still coming out, there were still some vehicles, the power plants were still running, we were still burning waste even during the lockdown. Now all that hydrocarbons and the nitrogen oxide, and under the influence of sunlight, they reacted with each other to form ozone. So just imagine therefore, and that's the reason why we are all talking about that focus not only in the primary emission, which means the pollutants that come out from the tailpipe, from the industry stack, from power plant stack, these are the primary emissions. But we need an even big focus on the secondary pollutant, which form in the atmosphere, in the air. And in fact, they are saying that science is very clear, and the studies in Delhi and other cities are showing that the nitrogen oxide, sulfur dioxide, once out in the air, they again form particles and they become part of the particulation. In Delhi, its contribution during winter can be as high as 25%. So which means if we have to control these secondary pollutants and ozone, along with particles, we need now a very strong program to control gases from all combustion sources. And that also tells us that often when you hear people dismissing pollution problem as a dust problem, that's not right. Dust is an issue. We have to control dust and we live in a dusty zone, but understand the toxicity of the pollution, where it's not the quantum, but even in small amount, a toxic pollutant can be hugely lethal and be cancer causing. So this, therefore, combustion sources will have to be the focus of mitigation.
I interrupted you when you were talking about waste. You wanted to say something about waste burning, how it contributes.
So this is one area. So if you look at, let me just give an example from Delhi, where a lot of things have also happened. In Delhi, if you look at the track record, so what has Delhi done? So there are some good things that have happened in Delhi. So Delhi has shut down, only city to shut down all coal power plants. It has phased out 10-year-old diesel vehicle, 15-year-old petrol vehicles. It has notified approved fuels, the clean fuel list, so no dirty fuel is allowed in Delhi. There is a restriction on truck movement. Natural gas use in industry has expanded, right? So a lot of things have happened. And that's also the reason why on year basis, we are actually seeing a downward trend in Delhi and the pollution curve has bent. But even after bending on that pollution curve, Delhi still has to do a lot more. It still requires 60% reduction to meet the clean air standard. Where is the gap? Now, one big gap is in the waste sector. And what we are finding that the municipal systems that are needed for very efficient and comprehensive collection of all streams of waste, segregation, collection, recycling, reuse, those systems are still very weak. And because of this deficit in waste management infrastructure, your waste is accumulating in different parts of the city. And the easiest way to dispose of that waste is to burn it. Now, when we recently did a survey of this kind of a thing, we were so shocked that just not the municipal solid waste, but when we went to the Mundka, Bhavana, those industrial areas, the recyclers, the huge mounds of plastic and rubber waste that cannot be recycled any further, that put on fire. And imagine thousands and thousands tons of plastic burning in the city, right? So we cannot deal with the pollution problem this winter or otherwise if waste management is not scaled up, not just for the legal areas of Delhi, but also unauthorized areas, for the slum areas. So, and 100% coverage for all streams of waste is absolutely essential. So that's what I just wanted to highlight about the waste.
There is also talk about how polluted our indoor air is, kind of thing. Some studies say that indoor air is more polluted than outdoor air. Your thoughts on that?
I've seen now many doctors who have come forward and they are talking about indoor air quality. And I'm glad in some ways, even this pandemic has actually helped us to connect with the indoor air quality. So when this happened during summer, the pandemic hit during summer, you would remember that we were all worried about air conditioning, you know, and it was said so clearly that you cannot live inside closed rooms. You need ventilation, right? And therefore, even if you're using your air conditioner, you need to ventilate and open your windows. So, but yes, we need to build a lot more science and information and evidence. But currently, the outdoor pollution and the other pollution sources have remained still so big in our country that battle will certainly be very big. And if you can clean up your outdoor air, your indoor air will also clean up to a great extent.
So before I end this, you mentioned the pandemic and all. How worried are you with the rising air pollution levels and the COVID-19? Because we already moved into the hazardous zone as we speak. Yeah. And also one last quick question is, I saw the Environment Minister saying that, this is specific to Delhi, that 90% of Delhi's pollution is local. Only 5% comes from outside. Do you agree with him?
Okay, so first about COVID. So since the lockdown, and we have been tracking all the new studies that are coming now that have looked very specifically into incidence of COVID and air pollution. So the Harvard studies carried out in Spain, Italy, even from China. The evidence is quite clear and indicative that if our lungs are already weakened by long-term exposure to air pollution, then our vulnerability to the pandemic is certainly higher. The risks are higher. Weak lungs cannot fight the virus. That's the message that is coming from the studies, right? So going forward during winter, we are worried that because of the situation, this is the time when most of the respiratory illness happen during winter. And therefore, this double burden of the pollution linked respiratory conditions and the COVID, and often, that certainly is going to lead to, and doctors are already making all kinds of predictions. So we are worried about that. And that's the reason why in this winter has to be about zero tolerance when it comes to implementing our emergency action. So that is the most important part of that. I mean, science is very clear that pollution moves across boundary, and we understand that very well. And so, and that's the reason why we want regional action. But that does not mean the regional action, yes, but local action has to be equally and even stronger. Because even regional action means that you have to strengthen local action across the region, right? It's not about shifting blames. It is not about asking someone else to take stronger action and we weaken our own action. So this science should not be misinterpreted and not misused, right? So therefore, I will say that all local governments, because all implementing bodies, all state governments have their very clear administrative boundary and jurisdiction. And within their respective jurisdiction, they have to take the most aggressive action possible, from hotspot action to citywide action, pollution-wise action, pollutant-wise action. And that has to get implemented with strong compliance strategy, strong deterrence strategy, and we have to look at verifiable improvement. So today, when NCAP is saying reduction in pollution by 20 to 30% by 2024, the action should be verifiable based on that reduction target. So I think that means all local governments, all state governments just have to strengthen their local action.
Thank you so much for your wisdom, Anumita Roychaudhary. Absolute pleasure having you on Planet Outlook. I'll see you soon. Stay safe.
Thank you so much, Anand. I really enjoyed this conversation.